Hello and welcome at a new frequently asked question on Friday. Today we will talk about a currently hot topic, which is post-market clinical follow-up, PMCF. We received quite some questions about this topic at QSurf, as there are still a lot of things are unclear. If you want to read more about PMCF requirements, then please go to the MDR Annex 14 Part B. That's the most important source at this moment. But recently also the MDCG guidances, the 2027 about PMCF plan and also the 2028 about the PMCF evaluation report are out. A little bit older document, but still valuable regarding PMCF can be the MEDEF 212.2. Just for your reference if you would like to read more and get more details about this topic. Let's move to the questions. The question we got is, we are working on our PMCF plan within our company, and that also includes surveys, but what we can't figure out is how long this type of data should be collected for. Does the proactive feedback for the life cycle of the device concept mean that we are to keep collecting data indefinitely? We would prefer to think that we collect feedback for a set period of time, then write a report and do not engage in the activity indefinitely. So we're not quite sure of the best way to plan. It is definitely an additional process and procedural burden, of course, so we wanted to be thoughtful and would really appreciate your insights. Well, this question, of course, has to do with the MDR stating PMCF should be understood as a continuous process that updates the clinical evaluation. For me, then the thought is triggered. What's the aim of the clinical evaluation? And that's bottom line, showing and considering, do I have sufficient clinical evidence? So that's the biggest driver, let's say, of any clinical and PMCF activity. So based on the clinical evaluation and the conclusions you can draw there, you have to decide, is what I have sufficient to cover all claims, all indications, everything I state in the labeling, all the patients populations intended. So that is, let's say, the starting point. So PMCF activities have the aim of confirming safety and performance throughout the expected lifetime. So keeping in mind the fact that PMCF should be understood as a continuous process, I would not look at it as one activity for a set of period of time and then write a report and close it and then it's done. It develops over time. I think we will see, and you can imagine that over time the extent, the complexity and the amount of PMCF activities, also the budget, might decrease, as there are not that many questions left, not that many things to further confirm, because you did already PMCF activities before, the device maybe didn't change, the population maybe did not change. So look at it as a sort of continuous review of, is your clinical data still sufficient, and are there, based on your CR, still open ends that might trigger a new PMCF activity. Maybe now, because of the lack of clinical evidence, this PMCF activity might be quite extensive, a registry, a lot of surveys, those kind of things. But maybe for the long run, in a few years you can say, it's not applicable anymore to do any PMCF, or I can, with a few sources of feedback from physicians, from patients, I can cover it. So it develops over time. Look at it like a sort of curve that goes down. To give an example, maybe the year 2020 you decide in your PMCF plan that you need a registry and it's running for the next 3 years. Maybe after those 3 years, so in 2023, your evaluation turns out that a survey in a very specific population should be sufficient. Then in 2024, because of a certain PMS signal trend, you think that it's useful to do an extensive literature search on a specific safety concern or in a specific area. And then maybe in 2025, you can justify that PMCF is not applicable, which is allowed according to the MDR. But that's then maybe not indefinitely, because maybe 2 years after you decide, okay, now there's a change in our product, or a change in the population, or maybe even a change in the state of art, and that requires us to reconsider new PMCF activities. So it can go up and down, the extent, the amount, the type of PMCF, and that covers the continuousness of the process. Regarding the justification for not doing any PMCF, that is allowed per MDR, but be careful and do not jump to that conclusion too easy, because there are actually almost always further clinical questions to consider and to confirm for the long run. Do you really know everything about every subpopulation and every indication? Long time follow-up. If not, then it's unrealistic to justify that PMCF is not applicable based on your CER. As said, as things change over time, maybe also the state of art, it might change. It might be necessary to reconsider to start up certain PMCF activities again. The process is continuous and it's never definitely closed, but there might be periods you can justify to not do any PMCF activity, and after a few times you have to update the PMCF plan again to see that you have to do certain activities. So for me, that's the continuousness of the process, and not that there's one activity you decide now you have to do that indefinitely. Absolutely not. It's every time, like with the clinical evaluation update, reviewing again, evaluating again. What do we have? Is that still state of art? Is that still sufficient? And if not, where can we go with which activities to cover those gaps? Then another question we received regarding PMCF. And that's a short question, but quite difficult to answer, to be honest. The question is, how much of the PMCF do I need to have already collected before I apply for an MDR certificate? And what does that depend on? As said, it's difficult to answer, and the answer is actually it depends. And again, here I would like to refer back to what the aim of the PMCF outcome data is. And I believe the answer does not lie in PMCF as a purpose in itself, but again, claiming sufficient clinical evidence. While updating your SER towards MDR, can you claim that you have sufficient clinical evidence for all claims, all indications, everything you state in labeling, all the population? Are there aspects that need additional clinical data, which you can still obtain by performing PMCF, as your device still has a certificate under MDR, under MDD. To be able to submit for recertification or MDR certification, the requirement is to show sufficient clinical evidence. If you cannot currently do that, then use the transition period to collect evidence with a PMCF activity, because now we still have a certificate. Now we can do it still post-market. And then you can show sufficient clinical evidence. If that's the case for your product, you have some PMCF data collected the moment you apply for MDR. If you believe you have already sufficient clinical evidence and you can continue with your certification with what you currently have, then maybe your PMCF activities might start a little later, or the outcome might, the results might come a little later. So it really depends on your situation, but keep in mind that doing PMCF, getting PMCF results in itself is not the purpose, but can you show that you have sufficient clinical evidence for all aspects? And if not, what are you going to do about that now in the transition period or in the future? Your notified body has the right to withdraw your certificate or not recertify your product if you do not have clinically sufficient evidence. So yes, they can say you cannot go for MDR certificate because we see in your SER too limited clinical evidence. They have that right. But what we see now in this transition period, that if it's a little thin what you have, it's maybe not really sufficient, but you come up with a strong, good, well-considered PMCF plan. They are, depending on the notified body, to be very honest, probably willing to accept that. So take a good critical look at your clinical evidence in all its aspects, and then create a strategic plan how to cover the gaps. That's, I think, the best advice we can give. Thank you very much for watching today. I hope that these answers were helpful for you and for your PMCF struggles. And in case you have any questions regarding this or other regulatory, quality or clinical topics, please contact us. We're always happy and willing to help you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.